Sarah Martinez knelt behind the concrete barrier, her breathing steady and controlled despite the chaos erupting around her. Bullets whizzed overhead while her fellow soldiers scrambled for cover. The enemy had positioned themselves strategically across the valley, picking off anyone who dared to move. But Sarah remained calm, her hands moving with practiced precision as she assembled her M24 sniper rifle the morning had. Started like any other day at Forward Operating Base Eagle, Sarah had been cleaning her equipment when the alarm sounded. Intelligence reported enemy movement in the surrounding hills, and within minutes her unit was mobilized. As the only female sniper in the battalion, Sarah had grown accustomed to the sideways glances and whispered doubts from some of her colleagues. Today would be different, though. Today, she would prove herself once and for all. Colonel James Richardson watched from the command post as his troops engaged the enemy. Through his binoculars, he could see muzzle flashes from multiple positions in the rocky terrain ahead. His men were pinned down, unable to advance or retreat safely. The situation was deteriorating rapidly and casualties were mounting. That's when he spotted Sarah, methodically setting up her rifle while others ducked for cover. "Martinez, what's your status?" Colonel Richardson's voice crackled through her radio. "Ready to engage, sir," Sarah replied. Adjusting the scope on her M24, her voice carried no trace of fear or uncertainty, just professional confidence. Sarah had joined the military straight out of high school, following in her father's footsteps. He had been a Marine sniper in Vietnam, and she had grown up listening to his stories about precision shooting and the patience required to be successful. Unlike Hollywood movies, real sniping wasn't about quick shots and dramatic kills. It was about mathematics. Wind calculations, breathing control, and most importantly, mental discipline. The enemy fire intensified, and Sarah could hear her squad leader shouting orders to keep everyone's heads down. She ignored the noise and focused on her breathing. In through the nose, out through the mouth. She had practiced this routine thousands of times on the range back home and during training. Her heartbeat slowed to a steady rhythm as she entered the zone that every skilled marksman knows. Through her scope, Sarah began identifying targets. The enemy fighters had positioned themselves well, using natural rock formations and fallen trees for concealment. Most soldiers would struggle to spot them, but Sarah's trained eye picked out movement and the subtle signs that revealed human presence. A glint of metal here, a shadow that didn't belong there. The slight movement of vegetation where there should be none. Colonel Richardson had been skeptical when Sarah first arrived at his base 6 months earlier. Not because she was a woman, but because she looked so young and inexperienced. At 22, she appeared more like a college student than a deadly sniper. But her training records spoke for themselves. She had graduated top of her class from sniper school and had consistently outperformed her peers on the range. "I count at least 8 hostiles in the tree line," Sarah reported through her radio, her voice steady and professional. "Requesting permission to engage?" "Negative, Martinez," came the reply from her squad leader. "Too dangerous. We need to wait for air support." But air support was still 20 minutes away, and the enemy was using that time to maneuver into better positions. Sarah could see them moving through her scope, preparing what looked like a flanking maneuver that would put her entire unit in serious danger. She made a decision that would define her military career. "Sir, with respect, we don't have 20 minutes, Sarah transmitted to Colonel Richardson directly. "They're moving to flank us. I can stop them, but I need to act now." The colonel studied the battlefield through his binoculars. Sarah was right. The enemy was indeed preparing to outflank their position. He had 2 choices: stick to protocol and potentially lose good soldiers, or trust the young sniper who had never fired a shot in combat. "Martinez, you have authorization to engage," Colonel Richardson announced over the radio. "All units, provide cover fire on my signal." Sarah felt a surge of adrenaline, but she channeled it into focus rather than letting it cloud her judgment. This was the moment she had trained for her entire military career. She selected her first target, a fighter who appeared to be directing the others' movements. Through her scope, she could see him clearly, unaware that he was being watched from 800 meters away. The wind was light, maybe 3 miles per hour from the east. Sarah made the mental calculations automatically, adjusting her aim slightly to compensate. The temperature was warm, which would affect the bullet's trajectory minimally. Elevation was in her favor, firing from a higher position to a lower one. All factors that she had practiced accounting for hundreds of times. Sarah's finger found the trigger of her M24, applying steady pressure until she reached the point where just a few more pounds of force would send the bullet downrange. She controlled her breathing, waiting for the natural pause between inhale and exhale when her body was most stable. This was the moment of truth. The first shot rang out across the valley, echoing off the rocky walls. Through her scope, Sarah watched as her target dropped immediately, the other enemy fighters looking around in confusion. They had no idea where the shot had come from, which gave her the advantage she needed for follow-up shots without pausing to celebrate. Her first successful combat engagement? Sarah was already tracking her second target. A fighter had broken cover and was running toward a better position. Sarah led him slightly, accounting for his movement and the time it would take for her bullet to travel the distance. Her second shot was as precise as the first. Colonel Richardson watched in amazement as enemy fighters began falling one by one. Each shot from Sarah's position was followed immediately by another hostile casualty. Her accuracy was remarkable, especially considering this was her first combat experience. The young woman he had doubted was systematically dismantling the enemy position with surgical precision. The enemy fighters began to panic, realizing they were being hunted by an invisible predator. Some attempted to retreat while others tried to locate Sarah's position to return fire. But she remained concealed, her muzzle flash hidden by a flash suppressor. Her position carefully chosen to avoid detection. As Sarah continued engaging targets, her squad mates began to notice the change in the battle's momentum. The overwhelming enemy fire that had pinned them down was decreasing rapidly. They started to advance, using the cover fire that Sarah was providing to move to better positions. The tide of battle was turning, and it was all because one young woman had maintained her calm under pressure and proven that skill, not gender or age, determined a warrior's worth on the battlefield. The battle continued for another 30 minutes, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. Sarah had eliminated 7 enemy fighters with 7 shots, each one placed with deadly precision. The remaining hostiles had either fled or been captured by advancing friendly forces. As the gunfire finally stopped, an eerie silence settled over the valley. Sarah remained in position, scanning the area through her scope for any signs of remaining threats. Her training had taught her that battles weren't over until they were completely over. Too many soldiers had been killed by enemies playing dead or hiding in wait for the all-clear signal. She would maintain her watch until ordered to stand down. "Outstanding work, Martinez," Colonel Richardson's voice came through her radio. "You can stand down now." Only then did Sarah allow herself to relax. She engaged the safety on her M24 and began the process of securing her equipment. Her hands were steady, showing no signs of the adrenaline that had been coursing through her system minutes earlier. This calmness under pressure was something that couldn't be taught in any military school. It was a natural gift that separated good snipers from exceptional ones. As Sarah made her way back to the main group, she noticed how her fellow soldiers looked at her differently now. The skeptical glances had been replaced by genuine respect and admiration. Sergeant Mike Thompson, who had been openly critical of having a female sniper in the unit, was the first to approach her. "Martinez, that was some incredible shooting out there," Thompson said, extending his hand. "I owe you an apology. I didn't think you had it in you." Sarah shook his hand firmly. "No apology necessary, Sergeant. I understand your concerns. Results speak louder than words anyway." Colonel Richardson called for a debrief immediately after the engagement. This was standard protocol following any combat action, but today's session would be particularly important. Sarah's performance would be documented and analyzed, not just for her own record, but as a case study for the integration of women into combat roles. "Martinez, walk us through your engagement sequence," Colonel Richardson began, sitting across from Sarah in the command tent. Several other officers were present, including the battalion commander, who had arrived via helicopter shortly after the battle ended. Sarah pulled out her field notebook, where she had recorded details about each shot immediately after the engagement. This level of documentation showed her professionalism and attention to detail. First target was at approximately 800 meters, slight crosswind from the east. Adult male, appeared to be in command position based on his gestures, and the battle continued for another 30 minutes, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. Sarah had eliminated 7 enemy fighters with 7 shots, each one placed with deadly precision. The remaining hostiles had either fled or been captured by advancing friendly forces. As the gunfire finally stopped, an eerie silence settled over the valley. Sarah remained in position, scanning the area through her scope for any signs of remaining threats. Her training had taught her that battles weren't over until they were completely over. Too many soldiers had been killed by enemies playing dead or hiding in wait for the all-clear signal. She would maintain her watch until ordered to stand down. "Outstanding work, Martinez," Colonel Richardson's voice came through her radio. "You can stand down now." Only then did Sarah allow herself to relax. She engaged the safety on her M24 and began the process of securing her equipment. Her hands were steady, showing no signs of the adrenaline that had been coursing through her system minutes earlier. This calmness under pressure was something that couldn't be taught in any military school. It was a natural gift that separated good snipers from exceptional ones. As Sarah made her way back to the main group, she noticed how her fellow soldiers looked at her differently now. The skeptical glances had been replaced by genuine respect and admiration. Sergeant Mike Thompson, who had been openly critical of having a female sniper in the unit, was the first to approach her. "Martinez, that was some incredible shooting out there," Thompson said, extending his hand. "I owe you an apology." "I didn't think you had it in you." Sarah shook his hand firmly. "No apology necessary, Sergeant. I understand your concerns. Results speak louder than words anyway." Colonel Richardson called for a debrief immediately after the engagement. This was standard protocol following any combat action, but today's session would be particularly important. Sarah's performance would be documented and analyzed, not just for her own record, but as a case study for the integration of women into combat roles. "Martinez, walk us through your engagement sequence," Colonel Richardson began, sitting across from Sarah in the command tent. Several other officers were present, including the battalion commander, who had arrived via helicopter shortly after the battle ended. Sarah pulled out her field notebook, where she had recorded details about each shot immediately after the engagement. This level of documentation showed her professionalism and attention to detail. First target was at approximately 800 meters, slight crosswind from the east. Adult male, appeared to be in command position based on his gestures and the way others were responding to him. She continued methodically through each engagement, explaining her target selection process, environmental factors she had considered, and the tactical reasoning behind her decisions. The officers listening were impressed not just by her accuracy, but by her analytical approach to the battlefield. "What made you decide to engage without waiting for air support?" the battalion commander asked. That was a significant deviation from standard protocol. Sarah had anticipated this question. "Sir, I observed the enemy beginning a flanking maneuver that would have put our entire unit at risk. Air support was still 20 minutes out, and in my assessment, we didn't have that much time. The tactical situation required immediate action, and you felt confident enough in your abilities to take on multiple targets in your first combat engagement?" the commander pressed. "Sir, confidence without competence is dangerous," Sarah replied. "But I had trained extensively for this exact scenario. My instructors at sniper school had prepared us for high-pressure situations, where quick decisions and accurate shooting would be critical. I felt ready." Colonel Richardson leaned forward. "Martinez, I have to be honest. When you first arrived here, I had my doubts. Not about your training or your scores, but about how you would perform when lives were on the line. Today, you proved that those doubts were unfounded." The debriefing continued for another hour, with Sarah answering detailed questions about her equipment, her positioning, and her decision-making process. Every aspect of her performance was scrutinized, but she handled each question with the same calm professionalism she had shown during the battle. Later that evening, Sarah sat alone in her quarters, cleaning her M24 rifle. This was a ritual she performed after every training exercise, and now after her first combat engagement. The weapon had performed flawlessly, but proper maintenance was essential for continued reliability. As she worked, she reflected on the day's events. Her father had always told her that the first time in combat would be different from training, no matter how realistic the exercises were. The bullets are real, the consequences are real, and the pressure is unlike anything you can simulate, he had said. But for Sarah, the experience had felt surprisingly familiar. All those hours on the range, all the mental preparation, had paid off. A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. "Come in," she called. It was Private Jennifer Walsh, one of the few other women in the unit. "I wanted to thank you," Jennifer said, sitting on the edge of Sarah's bunk. "What you did today, it matters for all of us. You showed them that we can do this job just as well as anyone." Sarah continued cleaning her rifle as she spoke. "I didn't do it to prove anything about women in the military. I did it because it was my job and my unit needed me to perform. But I'm glad if it helps other women get the opportunities they deserve." "Still, it means something," Jennifer insisted. "There are going to be articles written about today. People back home will hear about what happened here. Young women thinking about military careers will see that it's possible." Sarah hadn't considered the broader implications of her actions. She had been focused solely on the mission and her responsibilities to her unit. But Jennifer was right. In a military culture that was still adjusting to women in combat roles, today's success would resonate far beyond their small base in Afghanistan. The next morning brought new orders. Sarah's unit was being rotated to a different area of operations, one where sniper support would be even more critical. Intelligence reports indicated increased enemy activity and the terrain would favor long-range engagements. Colonel Richardson personally briefed Sarah on the new mission parameters. "Martinez, I'm recommending you for promotion to sergeant," the colonel informed her. "Your performance yesterday demonstrated leadership potential and exceptional skill under pressure. The promotion will give you more authority and open up additional training opportunities." Sarah was surprised by the offer. Military promotions typically took much longer to achieve, especially for someone so young. "Sir, I appreciate the consideration, but I want to make sure I'm ready for the additional responsibilities." "You've already shown you're ready," Colonel Richardson replied. "Yesterday wasn't just about accurate shooting. You made tactical decisions that saved lives and turned the tide of the battle. That's what leadership looks like in combat." As Sarah prepared for the move to their new area of operations, she thought about how much her life had changed in just 24 hours. She had gone from being the untested female sniper to being a combat veteran with a confirmed enemy kills and a promotion recommendation. But more importantly, she had gained the complete respect and trust of her fellow soldiers. The .24 rifle sat cleaned and ready in its case, waiting for the next mission. Sarah knew there would be more battles ahead, more opportunities to prove herself, and more chances to protect her fellow soldiers. She was ready for whatever came next. "Intelligence indicates their next major supply movement will be tomorrow night," Sarah replied. "I'll need to be in position before dawn to avoid detection during my approach. If everything goes according to plan, I can disrupt their operations significantly." Sarah spent the afternoon preparing for what would be her most challenging mission yet. She cleaned and calibrated her M24 rifle, paying special attention to the scope adjustments needed for the extreme range and elevation difference. She packed minimal equipment to reduce weight during her climb, but included extra ammunition and emergency supplies in case the mission extended longer than planned. The approach to her hide site took 6 hours of careful movement through rocky terrain in complete darkness. Sarah used night vision equipment to navigate, but relied heavily on her memory of the route she had scouted earlier. Every step had to be deliberate and quiet, as any noise could alert enemy sentries to her presence. She reached her position 2 hours before dawn and immediately began preparing for the long wait ahead. Sarah constructed a comfortable shooting position using rocks and vegetation for support and concealment. She established fields of fire and calculated ranges to various reference points throughout the valley below. Most importantly, she settled into the mental state required for extended observation and patience. As the sun rose, Sarah could see the enemy positions clearly through her scope. There were guards posted at regular intervals along the supply route, and she could observe their patrol patterns and timing. The intelligence reports had been accurate about the scale of the operation. This was clearly a major supply line that was critical to enemy operations in the region. At midday, Sarah spotted movement that indicated something significant was happening. Enemy fighters were taking positions along the route, suggesting that a convoy would be coming through soon. She radioed this information back to base and received confirmation that air assets were standing by if needed. But this would primarily be a sniper operation. The convoy appeared at 1400 hours, right on schedule according to the intelligence estimates. Sarah counted 12 fighters accompanying what appeared to be weapons and supply packs being moved by pack animals. The group was well organized and clearly experienced in this type of operation. They moved with confidence through terrain they considered safe. Sarah selected her first target carefully. The man appeared to be the leader of the group, walking at the front and occasionally giving hand signals to the others. He was at a range of approximately 920 meters, with a significant upward angle that would affect bullet trajectory. The wind was variable, shifting between 5 and 8 miles per hour from different directions as it moved through the mountain valleys. She made the necessary calculations and adjusted her scope accordingly. This would be the most technically challenging shot of her career, requiring perfect execution of all her training and natural abilities. There would be no second chances at this range with these conditions. Sarah controlled her breathing and waited for the perfect moment. The target stopped to check something in his pack, providing a stable shooting opportunity. She applied steady pressure to the trigger and sent her first shot downrange at the most challenging target she had ever engaged. The bullet traveled for what seemed like an eternity before finding its target. At 920 meters, even a perfectly aimed shot took over a second to reach its destination. Sarah watched through her scope as the enemy leader crumpled to the ground, causing immediate chaos among the rest of the convoy. The remaining fighters scrambled for cover, unsure where the shot had originated from. Sarah had already chambered another round, and was tracking her second target before the first man hit the ground. The key to successful long-range sniping was maintaining momentum and not allowing the enemy time to organize a response. Her second shot dropped another fighter who had been trying to organize the others into a defensive formation. The remaining enemy fighters were now in full panic mode. They had no idea where the shots were coming from, and the extreme range meant they couldn't even hear the muzzle blasts from Sarah's position. To them, their comrades were simply dropping dead without warning, creating a psychological effect that was almost as valuable as the physical damage being inflicted. Sarah continued her methodical engagement of targets, taking her time to ensure each shot was precise. She had brought 40 rounds of match-grade ammunition, and she intended to make each one count. The convoy that had been moving confidently through what they considered safe territory was being systematically destroyed by a single sniper they couldn't see or locate. Overwatch. "This is Firebase Alpha," Major Hayes' voice crackled through Sarah's radio. "We're observing secondary explosions in your target area. What's your status?" "Target area neutralized," Sarah replied calmly. "Convoy destroyed, supplies abandoned. No signs of organized resistance remaining." The secondary explosions the Major had mentioned were the result of ammunition and explosives the convoy had been carrying. Sarah's shots had likely hit some of these materials, creating a chain reaction that completed the destruction of the enemy's supplies. This was an unexpected bonus that would make the mission even more successful. Sarah remained in position for another 4 hours, observing the area to ensure no enemy reinforcements arrived to recover the abandoned supplies. During this time, she documented everything she had observed, including the routes used, the type of equipment being transported, and the security procedures the enemy had been following. This intelligence would be valuable for planning future operations. The extraction from her hide site proved more challenging than the approach. Enemy forces in the area were now on high alert, and Sarah had to move even more carefully to avoid detection. She took a different route back to base, one that required an additional 2 hours of movement but provided better concealment from potential enemy searches. When Sarah finally returned to Firebase Alpha, she found the command staff eager to debrief her on the mission. The success had exceeded all expectations, and the intelligence value was already proving significant. Intercepted enemy communications showed they were completely confused about what had happened to their convoy. 12 confirmed enemy casualties and complete destruction of a major supply shipment. Major Hayes summarized as he reviewed Sarah's after-action report. Plus, we've disrupted their entire supply network in this sector. Outstanding work, Martinez. Thank you, sir, Sarah replied. But I think this success will make them more cautious. They'll likely change their routes and procedures now that they know we can reach out to these ranges. The major nodded appreciatively. That's exactly the kind of tactical thinking I expect from my senior NCOs. Your promotion to sergeant came through this morning, by the way. Congratulations. Sarah's promotion ceremony was held the next day with her entire unit present. Colonel Richardson had flown in specifically to present her with her new stripes, wanting to personally recognize her exceptional service. As he pinned the sergeant's chevrons on her uniform, he spoke loud enough for everyone to hear. Sergeant Martinez represents the finest traditions of the American military, Colonel Richardson announced. She has proven that skill, dedication, and courage are what define a warrior, not gender or background. She is an example for all of us to follow. The recognition felt good, but Sarah was already thinking about future missions. The enemy would adapt to her tactics, requiring her to develop new approaches and techniques. This was the chess match aspect of sniper warfare that she found intellectually stimulating. Each success created new challenges that required creative solutions. Over the following weeks, Sarah conducted several more solo operations from various positions around Firebase Alpha. She varied her tactics and timing to prevent the enemy from developing effective countermeasures. Sometimes she would engage targets, other times she would simply gather intelligence. The unpredictability kept enemy forces constantly nervous and disrupted their operations significantly. The psychological impact of Sarah's operations extended far beyond the immediate tactical results. Enemy fighters began avoiding the area entirely, forcing them to use longer and more dangerous routes for their supply operations. Morale among friendly forces improved dramatically as they watched one person disrupt an entire enemy network through skill and determination. We're getting reports that the enemy has put a bounty on our sniper. Major Hayes informed Sarah during one of their regular briefings. They're offering significant rewards for information about your identity or location. Sarah wasn't surprised by this development. That means we're being effective, sir. But it also means I need to be even more careful about operational security. They'll likely try to use local informants to track my movements. Agreed. I'm implementing additional security measures for all your missions from now on, and I'm recommending you for the Bronze Star for your actions over the past month. The Bronze Star was a significant military decoration, typically awarded for heroic or meritorious service in a combat zone. For Sarah, who had been in the military for less than 3 years, it would be an extraordinary recognition of her abilities and contributions. News of Sarah's success began to spread beyond their immediate area of operations. Military publications wanted to interview her, and senior commanders from other units requested her for special missions. The young woman who had once faced skepticism about her capabilities was now being sought after as one of the most effective snipers in the region. But with recognition came new pressures and expectations. Sarah found herself being asked to train other snipers and to develop new tactics for mountain warfare. While she appreciated the trust this represented, she was most comfortable when she was behind her rifle, engaging the enemy directly. I want to keep doing operational missions, Sarah told Major Hayes when he offered her a position as a sniper instructor. "Training others is important, but my skills are best used in the field." "I understand your preference," the major replied. "But consider the bigger picture. You could potentially train dozens of snipers who could then go on to save hundreds of lives. Your knowledge and experience could have an impact far beyond what you can achieve personally." Sarah had never thought about her role in these terms. She had always focused on immediate tactical objectives and personal performance. The idea that she could multiply her effectiveness by teaching others was intriguing, even if it meant spending less time in direct combat operations. The decision would have to wait, however. Intelligence reports indicated that a high-value enemy target was planning to move through their area of operations within the next week. This individual was responsible for coordinating attacks throughout the region, and eliminating him could significantly disrupt enemy operations for months. "This is a priority mission," Major Hayes explained. "But the target will be heavily protected and will only be in the area for a short time. We need our best shooter for this one." Sarah began planning what would be her most important mission yet. The target would present only a brief opportunity, under challenging conditions, with significant consequences for success or failure. It was exactly the type of challenge she had joined the military to face. The intelligence briefing revealed the complexity of the upcoming mission. The high-value target was Ahmad Hassan, a senior enemy commander responsible for coordinating attacks across 3 provinces. Hassan was known for his careful security procedures and rarely exposed himself to potential threats. He would be traveling through their area to attend a secret meeting with other regional leaders. Hassan typically travels with at least 20 bodyguards, the intelligence officer explained, pointing to surveillance photos. He uses multiple vehicles and frequently changes routes at the last minute. Previous attempts to target him have failed because of these security measures. Sarah studied the photographs and route analysis carefully. Hassan was clearly a professional who understood the risks he faced. This wouldn't be like engaging a supply convoy or regular fighters. The target would be alert, well protected, and would only present a brief opportunity for engagement. Missing would likely mean he wouldn't be vulnerable again for months. "What's the intelligence confidence level on his route and timing?" Sarah asked. "Medium to high," the intelligence officer replied. "We have multiple sources confirming the meeting location and approximate timing. But his exact route is still uncertain, and he could arrive anywhere within a 6-hour window." Sarah spent the next 3 days conducting detailed reconnaissance of all possible routes Hassan might use. She identified 4 potential shooting positions that could cover the most likely approaches to the meeting location. Each position had advantages and disadvantages, requiring her to make strategic decisions about which offered the best probability of success. The primary position offered the shortest range at 600 meters, but had limited escape routes if the mission went wrong. The secondary position provided excellent concealment and multiple exit strategies, but would require a shot of over 1,000 meters under challenging conditions. Sarah ultimately decided to use the secondary position, believing that the extreme range would actually work in her favor by making it impossible for Hassan's security team to respond effectively. Major Hayes assigned additional surveillance teams to monitor all possible routes and provide Sarah with real-time intelligence about Hassan's movement. This was the largest operation Firebase Alpha had conducted since Sarah's arrival, involving over 30 personnel in support roles. The pressure to succeed was enormous. Sarah moved into position 12 hours before Hassan's estimated arrival time. She couldn't risk missing the opportunity due to late positioning, so she prepared for a long wait in uncomfortable conditions. The hide site required her to remain motionless in a cramped space while maintaining constant vigilance for target acquisition. The waiting was always the hardest part of sniper operations. Physical discomfort combined with mental tension created a challenge that many marksmen couldn't handle effectively. Sarah had learned to enter a meditative state that allowed her to remain alert while conserving energy and managing stress. This mental discipline was as important as her shooting skills. "Overwatch, this is Surveillance Team 2, came the radio call Sarah had been waiting for. We have eyes on a convoy matching target parameters approaching from the northeast. Estimated time to your sector is 15 minutes. Sarah immediately transitioned from her rest state to full operational readiness. She verified her rifles. 0, confirmed range estimates to various reference points, and began monitoring wind conditions that would affect her shot. After hours of waiting, she would have only seconds to execute when the target appeared. The convoy that came into view consisted of 3 vehicles traveling in standard, tactical formation. Sarah could see multiple armed guards and noted their professional appearance and equipment. This was definitely Hassan's security detail, but she needed positive identification of the target before engaging. Shooting the wrong person would be a catastrophic failure. Through her high-powered scope, Sarah observed each vehicle carefully as they passed through her engagement zone. The second vehicle had tinted windows that made target identification difficult, but the third vehicle provided a clear view of its passengers. There, in the back seat, was the distinctive face she had memorized from intelligence photographs. Ahmad Hassan was less than 1,000 meters away. Completely unaware that he was being watched, Sarah made her final range calculation. 1,040 meters with a slight downward angle and variable winds that would require careful compensation. The target was moving at approximately 30 miles per hour, requiring her to lead significantly to account for the vehicle's motion. This would be the most technically challenging shot of her career. Hassan's vehicle was approaching a curve in the road that would slow it down and provide a more stable shooting platform. Sarah planned to take her shot at the moment the vehicle began the turn, when it would be moving slowest and would be positioned optimally for her sight picture. Overwatch, be advised that additional vehicles are approaching from the south, came an urgent radio transmission. Possible reinforcements or additional security elements. This complicated the tactical situation significantly. If there were additional enemy forces in the area, Sarah's extraction could become much more dangerous. But Hassan was right there, presenting the opportunity they had been waiting for. She had to make a decision quickly. Sarah keyed her radio. Understood, taking the shot now. The vehicle entered the curve exactly as Sarah had predicted. She could see Hassan clearly through the rear window, and the reduced speed provided the stable platform she needed for an accurate shot. Sarah controlled her breathing, calculated her final hold-off for wind and movement, and applied steady trigger pressure. The .308 caliber bullet took just over 1 second to travel the distance to its target. Sarah watched through her scope as the rear window of Hassan's vehicle shattered, knowing immediately that her shot had been successful. The vehicle swerved off the road and came to a stop against a large rock. Chaos erupted in the convoy as security personnel realized they were under attack. Guards began jumping out of vehicles and scanning the surrounding terrain for threats. But Sarah's position was too well concealed and too far away for them to identify. The extreme range that had made the shot technically challenging now provided her with the security she needed to observe the results and plan her extraction. Target neutralized, Sarah reported through her radio. Beginning extraction now. The additional vehicles that surveillance had reported turned out to be a second enemy convoy that had been following Hassan's group at a distance. This created a significant threat to Sarah's escape route as enemy forces were now spread throughout the area and actively searching for the source of the shot that had killed their commander. Sarah began moving from her position using a route she had planned specifically for this contingency. She moved slowly and deliberately, using natural cover and terrain features to remain hidden from the numerous enemy personnel now flooding the area. Every few hundred meters, she would stop and observe the search activity before continuing her movement. The extraction took 6 hours of careful movement through hostile territory. Several times, Sarah had to remain motionless for extended periods, as enemy patrols passed within meters of her position. Her camouflage skills and patience were tested to their limits, but her training and natural abilities allowed her to remain undetected. When Sarah finally reached the extraction point where a helicopter was waiting to recover her, she was exhausted but successful. She had eliminated one of the most wanted enemy commanders in the region while operating alone in hostile territory at extreme range. The mission would be remembered as one of the most successful sniper operations of the entire conflict. Outstanding work, Sergeant, Major Hayes greeted her as she climbed into the helicopter. Hassan's death is already causing confusion in their command structure. Intelligence estimates it will take them months to reorganize their operations in this region. Sarah simply nodded, already beginning the mental process of transitioning from operational mode back to normal awareness. The mission was over, but she knew there would be others. The enemy would adapt, requiring new tactics and continued vigilance. This was the nature of warfare, an endless cycle of action and reaction that demanded constant evolution and improvement. The elimination of Ahmad Hassan created immediate and far-reaching consequences throughout the enemy network. Within days of the successful mission, intercepted communications revealed confusion and infighting among various enemy groups as they struggled to reorganize their command structure. Sarah's single shot had achieved what months of conventional operations had failed to accomplish. The impact of your mission extends far beyond what we initially anticipated, Major Hayes informed Sarah during their post-mission briefing. Hassan was apparently the key coordinator for attacks planned across the entire region. With him gone, those operations have been canceled or significantly delayed. Sarah listened to the intelligence updates with professional satisfaction, but she was already thinking about future challenges. Success in one mission often created new problems and opportunities that required different approaches. The enemy would likely increase security for their remaining leadership and might change their operational patterns entirely. I'm being asked to brief senior commanders about the tactics and techniques used in the Hassan operation, Major Hayes continued. They want to understand how we can replicate this success in other areas. Would you be willing to participate in those briefings? Of course, sir, Sarah replied. But I think it's important to emphasize that this type of operation requires specific conditions and extensive preparation. It's not something that can be easily replicated without the right personnel and circumstances. Over the following weeks, Sarah found herself in the unusual position of briefing generals and colonels about sniper tactics and mountain warfare techniques. These senior officers were primarily interested in understanding how her methods could be applied on a larger scale across multiple combat zones. The key factors were patience, detailed reconnaissance, and willingness to take calculated risks, Sarah explained during one such briefing at regional headquarters. But most importantly, you need snipers who can perform under extreme pressure at extended ranges. Those skills take years to develop and can't be rushed. General Patricia Morrison, the regional commander, was particularly interested in Sarah's assessment of training requirements. If we wanted to create more sniper teams capable of these types of operations, what would you recommend? Sarah had given this question considerable thought. More advanced training in mountain warfare and extreme range shooting, sir. Most sniper schools focus on ranges under 800 meters. Operations in this terrain regularly require shots beyond 1,000 meters, which demands different skills and equipment. Would you be interested in helping develop that advanced training program? General Morrison asked. The offer was both flattering and concerning. Sarah appreciated the recognition of her expertise, but she was worried about being pulled away from operational duties. She had joined the military to serve in combat, not to become a trainer or administrator. I'd be honored to contribute, General, Sarah replied carefully. But I'd prefer to remain operationally active while providing input on training development. General Morrison smiled. I thought you might say that. We're not looking to pull you out of the field. Rather, we want you to help train selected personnel who could then return to their units with enhanced capabilities. This compromise appealed to Sarah. She could share her knowledge and experience without giving up the operational role she loved. It would also allow her to continue developing her own skills while helping other snipers reach their full potential. The first advanced training course took place at a specialized facility in the mountains of Colorado, where terrain and conditions similar to Afghanistan could be replicated safely. Sarah worked with 12 experienced snipers from various units, focusing on extreme range shooting and mountain warfare tactics. The biggest challenge at these ranges is environmental calculation. Sarah explained to her students during the first day of instruction. Wind speed and direction can change significantly between your position and the target, especially in mountain terrain. You need to read the environment constantly and adjust accordingly. The students were all accomplished marksmen, but most had never attempted shots beyond 800 meters under realistic conditions. Sarah designed exercises that gradually increased the complexity and range requirements, building their confidence and skills systematically. Remember that at these distances, even small errors in calculation can result in complete misses, Sarah emphasized during live-fire exercises. Take your time, verify your data, and don't take questionable shots. One confirmed hit is worth more than 5 misses. During the 2-week course, Sarah was impressed by how quickly her students adapted to the advanced techniques. These were experienced professionals who understood the fundamentals and just needed to extend their capabilities to greater ranges and more challenging conditions. The final exercise involved a simulated high-value target engagement at over 1,000 meters under time pressure. Each student had to demonstrate their ability to calculate range, wind, and movement factors quickly while maintaining shooting accuracy under stress. 7 of the 12 students successfully completed the exercise, a success rate that exceeded expectations. Outstanding performance, Sarah told the graduating class. You've proven that these advanced techniques can be learned and applied effectively. Take this knowledge back to your units and continue practicing. Your skills could save lives and accomplish mission objectives that were previously impossible. After the training course ended, Sarah returned to Firebase Alpha with a new appreciation for the teaching aspects of her role. She had discovered that sharing knowledge and watching others develop their abilities was almost as satisfying as personal operational success. Major Hayes greeted her return with new mission requirements. While you were away, we received intelligence about a new enemy leader who's trying to fill Hassan's role. This individual is reportedly even more careful about security than Hassan was. We're going to need your expertise to deal with this emerging threat. Sarah studied the preliminary intelligence reports on the new target. The enemy had clearly learned from Hassan's death and was implementing much more sophisticated security procedures. This would require new tactics and approaches that pushed the boundaries of what was considered possible in sniper operations. This target uses decoy convoys and false movement patterns, Major Hayes explained. He never uses the same route twice, and he has counter-sniper teams actively searching for threats along his routes. This is going to be significantly more challenging than the Hassan operation. Sarah found the new challenge intellectually stimulating. We'll need to think differently about this problem, sir. Traditional sniper tactics won't work against someone who's actively implementing counter-sniper measures. We need to be more creative and unpredictable than they are. What are you thinking? Major Hayes asked. Multiple positions, coordinated timing, and misdirection, Sarah replied. If he's expecting snipers, we give him snipers, but not where he expects them. We make him react to threats that aren't real while the real threat comes from an unexpected direction. The plan Sarah developed was complex and would require perfect execution from multiple team members. It represented an evolution in sniper tactics that took advantage of the enemy's own security measures and turned them into weaknesses. If successful, it would establish new standards for special operations in mountainous terrain. This is ambitious, Major Hayes commented after reviewing Sarah's proposal. But given your track record, I'm willing to approve it. When do you want to execute? Intelligence suggests the target will be moving through our area in 10 days, Sarah replied. That gives us time to position assets and conduct rehearsals. We'll only get one chance at this, so preparation will be critical. Sarah began the most complex mission planning of her career, coordinating multiple elements to create an operation that would challenge every skill she had developed. The stakes were high, the target was sophisticated, and the margin for error was essentially zero. It was exactly the type of challenge she had been preparing for her entire military career.